All right, I have officially gotten the license for Dirac Live full bandwidth and bass control. So let's get it set up, shall we? All right, before I begin officially, I just want to show you my setup here. I've got my false back wall here with these panels that I built. I've got the laptop set up right behind it. I've got a webcam right here with my DJI Osmo Pocket 3, and then I'll be recording the screen of what's going on with Dirac Live on my laptop so we can get it all. And I've got the mini DSP UMic 1 that's going to be taking all the measurements and stuff. That is also connected to my laptop. So yeah, that's what we got going on here. Okay, before I officially get started on this tutorial, I wanted to let you know that I had to switch out some things in my theater. You may or may not have seen the previous video where I go over just what I have in this theater, but what I had previously in here was an Aperion Audio Energy 2 amplifier hooked up to the front, left, and right speakers, and Aperion Audio E7 amplifier powering the rest of the ear level speakers, and then a Stark Fiera 8 amp powering all 8 of my height channels. So one thing you're going to notice as I get into Dirac Live in the software, that you cannot boost any output signals. You can only trim them. You can only reduce the volume. You can only reduce it to a maximum of -12 whenever you're trying to level match all of your speakers. So I ran into a problem because I attempted to do this video yesterday and there were too many things that ended up going wrong. So I had to just scrap all the footage. So the very last thing I did was switch out all the amps. So now they're all class AB, because having class AB amps for the ear level speakers, they actually do output more volume. They're just louder. So in order to match that with the height speakers being powered by the Stark Fiera 8, which is a class D amplifier, much more efficient, does not get hot. That's why I wanted to use it. I love that amp. But in the end, I kept running into this vicious cycle where I would reduce the side surrounds because they are the closest in proximity to the main listening position. I had to reduce the side surrounds to -12, as low as they could go in Dirac Live. But I could never get the height channels loud enough to match all the other speaker levels. So I was going back and forth. I did this and that and trimmed this and boosted this and reduced that. And I could never get it to work because the Stark Fiera 8 just wasn't outputting the same amount. So this is kind of a testament to using the same type of amp, learn from my mistakes. Even though I love the Stark Fiera 8, in order for this to work, in order for Dirac Live to level match everything correctly, I needed to use all class AB amps. It is what it is. I was bummed that I needed to, disconnect everything and put some other amps in. So now I have the Emotiva XPA5, but I'm not using all 5 channels. I am just powering the front soundstage, the front left, center, and front right. Then I have this Aperion Audio Energy 7 amp powering the ear level speakers and the Voice of God. And then another Aperion Audio E7 Energy amp powering the rest of the height channels. Now they're all class AB. Now they're all going to output the same amount of SPL, etc. So hopefully now I can get all of the speakers balanced and level. And that's just step 1 when dealing with Dirac, is level matching. So I'm glad it happened at the beginning. Obviously, I wish that I didn't have to switch things around. It would have made life a little bit easier because amps are really heavy and it's not easy pulling them out, putting another one in, hooking everything up again. So, but it is what it is. I just had to deal with it for you. So just wanted to clue you in on that update. And also just to have you learn from my mistake. If you really want the best possible outcome and everything level matched, you're probably going to want to use the same class of amp all across the board. Someday I would love to have all class D amplifiers, because then that would be super efficient, not warming up my listening space by being so hot, etc. But for now, it's all class AB. Now that I got that over with, let's jump into the software. Okay, so I've downloaded the software, I have installed it on this laptop. One snag I ran into right off the bat is that I thought I had set up the network settings on the Marantz AV10, but apparently not. You know, I set it up on various things, my phone, my laptop, my Apple TV 4K, whatever. But apparently I decided to skip that step when dealing with the AV10. So it is now hooked up to the same wireless network that my phone and my laptop and TV and everything is hooked up to. So now they can all speak to each other. Let's go ahead and search for devices once more. Now that they are on the same network, it should be able to find the Marantz AV10. Fingers crossed. Cool. You know what? Let's exit out of that. Let's just open it up once again. Maybe it'll do better. Why did it fail finding the device? Super cool. I love troubleshooting right off the bat. Did it not actually work? Okay, try this one more time. Netgear 42. Netgear 42. Okay folks, in another installment of Be Better Than Me, don't forget to update the firmware on your AVR or audio processor. Because apparently there was an older version on there that was, for whatever reason, interfering with the Wi-Fi broadcast or something. I don't know. Because all I did was update the firmware of the Marantz AV10. And look at this. I now have the Marantz AV10. It found it. Hooray. Whew. So let's get this party started, shall we? All right, select recording device. There are 3 parts working together to perfect your sound. This application, the hi-fi device you selected at the start, and a sound recording device to measure the hi-fi device and room widths. UMic 1. And don't forget, you need to load the calibration file, the 90-degree calibration file, so that way it's pointed straight up. You don't want to have it pointed at the speakers. You want it pointed at the ceiling. So that will be the 90-degree file. And here it is in my downloads folder that I downloaded, I don't know, a long time ago, but still in that folder. So boom, that's all we need. Open. Okay. Proceed to volume calibration. Speaker level and microphone gain settings. In the world of microphones, you want to keep the input stage as low as you can because then you can raise the gain either in post-production or by some other means later on. If your input level is too high on the microphone, it doesn't take much to clip that signal, right? Proceed. And let me just turn it around here. You can see, hey, Dirac Live calibration in progress. Woohoo! One thing you'll notice, the mic gain here, I did read online that somebody said it's good to start with the mic gain itself to have a noise floor of -50 decibels. That's where you want to start with the microphone. So this office is by a pretty busy intersection. Kind of sucks it's not exactly whisper quiet all the time, especially if you got some big beefy trucks that are driving by or whatever. But for the most part, whenever it's quiet in here, nothing coming out of the speakers, just air, right? The noise floor tends to be hovering around 40 decibels, where the mic gain is set to 0 decibels. Because I'll shut up right now so you can see that it lowers down to about 40 decibels. And see, it jumped up a little bit because a car just drove by. But yeah, roughly 40 decibels. So since we need to get down to -50, I'm going to lower the mic gain 10 decibels. You know what? It's hovering around -52, so I'm going to go to -8. Okay, I think I like that a little bit better. The average is a little bit closer to -50 decibels. Now, the thing about Dirac Live is I watched their really kind of quick overview of how to set up Dirac Live on the official Dirac Live YouTube channel, and they do suggest, as opposed to calibrating to reference levels, that is like way too loud. You need headphones for that. You need ear protection to actually deal with reference levels. Instead of doing that, Dirac themselves suggest to just raise it to a level that you are comfortable with. Not ear splitting, but pretty loud. Yes, you want it pretty loud, but not overbearing and not just something you can't handle. Over the past couple of weeks, if I watch a movie, I tend to have the level of the AV10, the overall output level, at negative 22 decibels. That's comfortable for me, so I think that's probably going to be my target, possibly maybe even a little bit quieter, maybe negative 25. So what I'm going to do is play some pink noise coming out of the front left, since that's the first speaker that we're dealing with in this sequence. And by default, the master output is at negative 55.5 decibels. So what I'm going to do, you're going to see this white line start to move next to the blue line of the front left speaker. And I'm going to raise the overall output volume until I see the front left speaker stop at around negative 22 decibels. And again, that's just for me. Your preference may be negative 10 decibels. Your preference may be negative 30. Who knows? But just from watching things in here previously, negative 22 was where I liked it. For whatever reason, that number may be totally arbitrary, but that's what we're going with. So you calibrate your system to what you deem as comfortable. All right, so we can hear a little bit of noise. Let's raise the master output. Now you can see that white line start to move up. And yeah, it does time out. As you can see, that little circle with the green, that green little portion disappears. So we'll press play again. One thing I like about this software is that, yes, I can click and drag, as you saw me doing just now, but you can also click into the space and put in exact amounts, which I find very useful. Although you can only change these numbers in increments of 0.5 decibels. So you can't change them in 0.1 or 0.2.5, 0.5 decibels. So that's why I'm trying to get every speaker to be about negative 22. Give or take, maybe 0.5 to 1 decibel difference, whatever, because I'm never going to get all of them at exactly negative 22. I don't know if you heard that big old truck that just drove by. See, this is why I wish I could afford to, have some big shed built on my own property out in the country where it's really quiet someday. But yeah, negative 22.2, I think having the master output at negative 20, I think that's the sweet spot. But before I move on, that's dealing with an ear level speaker. That is going to have more energy. It's going to be louder overall because it's a bigger speaker than my height channels. So you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to start, instead of going with the rest of my ear level speakers, because I can't increase the output volume, I can only decrease the output volume. You can see here that all of these default output levels are set to 0 decibels, and that's at the very top. I can't increase that, I can only decrease it. So I'm going to go to a height channel next because there's a possibility that maybe it doesn't output sound loud enough to get to negative 22 in its current state. So you might want to start with the speaker you think is going to output the lowest level of SPL. Not saying that these height speakers are small and puny. I'm just saying just because they are smaller, there is a chance that they might not be able to get to negative 22 right now. So let's go with, front height right. That's the first height channel that we deal with in this process. See, that only got up to negative 25. So it's a good thing I did that. So now I'm going to have to raise the master output once again to then get the height channels to negative 22 decibels. Because right now they're not getting there. So now I'm going to play pink noise once again out of the front height right, and I'm going to once again raise the master output until it gets to -22. And it's probably also because they are height channels, so they are just further away to the microphone than the ear level speakers. So another thing to take into consideration. I think that's it. -17. So having the master output to -17, let's go ahead and do the other height channels just to make sure maybe there's another one that's even quieter. Because if that's the case, you're going to want to find the quietest speaker in your system to start with. If there's one that's quieter, I'm going to have to raise the master output once again. So that's the trick. Seek out your quietest speaker, and then everything else can hopefully be reduced enough to then match everything else. So let's go with middle height right. So that's more like -21. So let's reduce this by -1 decibel. Good, I like it. Rear height right. I like it. I don't need to touch that one. That one's already at -22-ish. Rear height left. Ah, see? This one needs a 1 decibel boost. And since I can't boost it, I'm going to need to raise the master output once again. So for whatever reason, I don't know why it is not outputting as much as the rear height right, but the rear height left seems to be just a tiny, tiny bit quieter. These are anomalies that you are inevitably going to run into in your own system. So let's raise the master output volume to -16. That's more like it. I'm going to guess that that's probably going to be my quietest speaker. Okay, let's go middle height left. Okay, that makes sense because it's closer physically to the microphone. So let's reduce that by 2 decibels. See where that lands us. Yeah, it's good. Front height left. Okay, let's maybe reduce that by 1 decibel. Yeah, we're good there. Center height for RO3D. Maybe just -0.5 on that. Not too much. Yeah. And then voice of God. Most likely I'm going to need to reduce this since it's straight above the microphone pretty much. Yeah, maybe -2 on that one. -2.5. That's more like it. Okay, so we determined that the rear height left was the quietest speaker for whatever reason. We raised the master output to -16 decibels. So let's go back and let's now do the ear level speakers. Let's start with the front left, -18. So let's reduce that by 4. Cool. Maybe -3.5. So it's closer to 22 maybe. Ugh. You know what? Yeah, let's keep it at -4 because it keeps jumping up at times. I don't know, let's start at the same spot and then see any little adjustments we need to do. So let's do -4 for a center as well. Wow, -5. I mean, it is more in line with the microphone, so that makes sense. -21.9, basically -22. So let's do, for the front right, let's start at -4. For whatever reason, it's a little bit quieter than the front left. Do -3. Yeah, whatever. Okay, front wide right. Wow, 22 minus 16 is 6. So let's try -6. There we go. Okay, surround right. The surrounds are the closest in proximity to the microphone, so I'm probably going to have to reduce this one the most. So I'm going to start at -6 and we'll go from there. Yeah, so -9. Let's go -8.5. That's more like it. Okay, so surround back right. Let's start at -8 maybe. -7 perhaps. Yeah, -7. Surround back left. We'll start at -7 also. A little bit hot. Maybe -7.5. Yeah, let's keep it there. And again, like I said, you're not going to get -22 decibels exactly. So if you're in the ballpark, great. Surround left, let's see, surround right, we did -8.5. So we'll start there and make any fine adjustments if we need to. Wow, Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, front wide left. Let's see, front wide right, we were at -6. So let's start there. Yeah, that's pretty much where the front wide right was. And that's all of our speakers, folks. We've trimmed them all. Oh yes, but since we raised the overall master output volume when we figured out that the rear height left was the quietest one, now we probably need to take down all the rest of the heights, maybe a decibel, since we raised the master output by a decibel. So front height right, yeah, maybe -1. Yeah, middle height right. Yep, reduce that another decibel to -2. I like it. Let's just go ahead and reduce this one already to -1, the rear height right. Rear height left, we've already determined that that was our quietest one. So, although I'm just curious, make sure it's where it needs to be. Good, we're good there. All right, top, middle, left, and let's just double check front height left. Cool, center height, good, voice of God, awesome. All right, one thing you want to know about subwoofers, we're dealing with low frequencies. And low frequencies are longer wavelengths and they contain more energy. So typically, if I were to level match the subwoofers to -22 decibels, it's probably going to come out not that loud because you've got so much more energy behind those sound waves, and they're going to get to -22 decibels real quick. So what I'm going to do is level match them to be 10 decibels hotter than the rest of the ear level speakers. Again, because there's just more energy. And typically when I do that, when I level match the subwoofers 10 decibels hotter, then it feels more like what I like feeling when I'm watching a movie. Not overbearing, not just absurd, but enough to really get that cinematic bass feel. So when playing these, I'm going to, since I want to try and get to -22 decibels, I'm going to try and do these subwoofers to reach -12 decibels. Does that make sense? 10 decibels hotter. So we'll start with subwoofer 1. Well, -13. So I'm actually going to have to raise the actual physical dial of the subwoofer up a little bit to get to -12. So I'm going to do that real quick. That's the nice thing about subwoofers. You can actually adjust the volume on the subwoofer itself, unlike passive speakers where all volume adjustment is just done in the software. So let's try that again. Okay, so I raised it a little bit too much. So let's reduce this now to, I don't know, -1. We'll try that. -1.5. Yeah, I like that. Subwoofer 2. Wow. All right, I'm gonna go over to that subwoofer and raise the output gain on that just a little bit. Okay, let's try it again. All right, let's do this one, -1.5. See where we're at. Noise. Okay, subwoofer 3. Maybe raise the knob just a tiny bit. All right, let's reduce that by 0.5 decibels. Maybe even -1. Yeah, I mean, the rest of them were sitting at -11.9, basically -12. So yeah, let's just keep that at -0.5. Yeah, there we go. Okay, they're all at -11.9. Okay, subwoofer 4. I just need to raise that volume slightly. Okay, let's reduce that by -0.5. Sweet. Okay, I think we got that banged out. Proceed to select arrangement. Okay, default is focused image, which means it focuses it, but it's also a fairly wide calibration because as you can see in the graphic there, somebody is sitting on a couch. So it's taking into account, maybe you'll get 2 people on that couch, maybe 3. As you can see in the text here, has a well-defined listening position that should still accommodate a degree of flexibility, meaning there could be more than one person in this place. Wide imaging, if you're definitely having more than one person, or tightly focused if it's just a chair as opposed to a couch. That's what I'm dealing with since I only have one chair. This arrangement represents the particular situation where the listener has a well-defined and precise listening position from which they rarely move. That's me, because I'm sitting in one chair. I don't move away from that chair. I recline back in that chair and I'm not moving anywhere. And you can see down here, 9 measurement positions. Even though it's only one tightly focused image, we're still dealing with 9 positions. Dirac Live takes it to the next level. Proceed to measure. They require several measurements. All right. This one, we start with the main position, which is roughly where your head will be sitting in this chair. That is what I want. I want to select it, main position, measure selected position. What? One of them clipped. Maybe I need to reduce the mic input gain, the calibration mic input gain on this step. So we had it at -16, so maybe I'll reduce it to -19, or maybe let's go with an even 20, so -20. Almost done. It clipped on, I think, subwoofer 3. So I'm just, instead of reducing the overall volume, I'm going to reduce just the subwoofer volumes, or maybe just subwoofer 3, -1.5. It was so close too. Man, it was almost done. Keeps clipping on subwoofer 3. That's the Stark SW12. Let's reduce it to -3. You know, I've got 17 speakers plus 4 subwoofers. So the fact that it keeps clipping on subwoofer 3 so close to the end. I mean, if I really need to, I'm just gonna raise the output gain on the subwoofer itself. But just to get past this calibration step, I'm just gonna reduce it to -6, see where that takes us. Well, hold on. Maybe it's because this back subwoofer is in closer proximity to, I mean, it's not that much closer compared to the front subwoofers. Just to make sure we don't fail again on subwoofer 4 once we finally get to it. I'm going to reduce that to -3 decibels. Finally, front left. Whoa, look at that dip at 100 hertz with that front left. Big old dip at 300 hertz too. Center, okay, not too bad. Front right. Front right doesn't have that big old dip at 100 hertz. Okay, interesting how the front wide right has that big old spike at about, I don't know, 15 hertz? I don't know, maybe that's just an anomaly. Surround right. Oh, dang, surround back right. Got that big old chunk from about 60 to 100 hertz, 60 to 120 hertz. Same thing with the surround back left. Okay, surround left looks pretty good. Front wide left, front height right, top middle right, rear height right, rear height left, middle height left, front height left, center height, top surround. Okay, subwoofer, subwoofer 2, subwoofer 3. Oy, that sub 3, yikes. That's that Stark SW12. Giving me problems, man, because it kept clipping. Because that was kind of the weird thing about the Stark SW12 is when it's initially starting, yeah, you can feel like a real deep rumble, as opposed to the other 3 subwoofers I have in the system that were more like gradual as they got louder, as the frequency sweep was going higher and higher. But yeah, the Stark SW12, it's got that, like right out of the gate, had like a big jump and then it kind of tapered off. Huh. Okay, front top right. Let's move the microphone in position. So just forward of my listening position and up, as you can see from this graphic here. I reposition the microphone, front top right. Okay. Okay, So looking back on things, since I had to reduce the volume of the rear subwoofers, since they were technically a little bit closer physically to the calibration microphone, since I had to reduce them to -9, maybe making them 10 decibels hot was a step that I didn't need to account for. I don't know. So again, learn from my mistakes. I hope that that's why you're watching this, to get a sense of what to do and what not to do. But I only had to reduce the front subwoofers by -5 to pass all of the calibration steps. So it is what it is. Do what you need to do, whatever. Let's continue then. Filter design. Dirac Live now has enough data to model the characteristics of your room and system and calculate compensation filters. I'm just reading this because clearly it's going through some calculations or something because it's still initializing. So as we can see, it grouped it automatically, the front left and the front right, into one group. And yeah, it looks like the target curve is following that. Man, look at that dip in the 4 kilohertz region right around here. And also that dip in about 250 hertz. It looks like technically I could just create my own custom target curves by moving this stuff. Okay, you have completed the process and the filter is ready to be used on your AV10. It did its calculations, it did stuff, so I don't know, I guess it's time to check it out. It's been exported to the AV10. Okay, what I did was a quote-unquote blind sweep of Dirac Live and bass control, meaning I didn't do any tweaks afterwards, some manual tweaks. I just let Dirac Live do its thing, and that was it. And then I watched some demo scenes, the racing scene from Ready Player One, and that one in particular, the racing scene from Ready Player One, man, the high frequencies, like especially when the train derails and starts coming towards the screen and the brakes are shrieking and scraping. Wow, that was harsh. I mean, at the same time though, like in real life, if that were to happen, it would also be shrill and very hard on the ears. So I don't know, it's kind of like real life, but at the same time, it was just a little bit too much. So I don't know about every single speaker, but at least the front soundstage, maybe the front wides, possibly the surrounds. I want to reduce the high frequencies, just kind of like a general reduction of the high frequencies, like a roll off a little bit, just to kind of tame those high frequencies, because man, it was ear piercing. Although the only thing I would have to say is that previously in my grow shed theater, when I had it set up with the IOTA AVX17, oh man, I got some really good bass. And this was the same exact 4 subwoofers, the 2 Bravas 12D subwoofers from Empyrean Audio, the Stark SW12, and the SVS SP4000. And I would get some really good chest thumping bass, like bass extension and bass response that I hadn't experienced except for being in an actual movie theater. So that was so cool to experience in that previous theater. I have yet to experience that specifically in this new office theater. So maybe I need to bump up the bass just a little bit. Maybe then I'll get that more kind of aggressive bass that I could feel in my chest. Because man, when I heard it in the previous theater, I was in love. I was like, oh, this is it, man. This is bass that really sells it, like if I was in an actual movie theater. So I'm trying to chase that once again. And I haven't yet gotten there in this office theater space yet, but that's what minor tweaks are for, manual tweaks that I can do afterwards. So that's what I'm doing now, is the manual tweaks. So I could kind of mess with these nodes here that are on the target curves that Dirac Live has automatically created. But I kind of want to just do a little more generalized adjustments. So I'm going to go to the bass management tab here. And now you can see, instead of several nodes, I can just tame the high frequencies and I can raise the bass frequencies in a more general sense. I also want to change some of the crossovers because I'm not jazzed about some of the automatic crossovers that Dirac Live assigned. You can see here that 70 Hertz is what they've assigned for the front, left, and right. But previously, whenever using the Aperion Audio Theatra speakers, at least the T65s, I would have the crossovers at 60 Hertz. So I'm going to do that. It's at plus 2.3 decibels with the low frequencies right now. I'm going to boost them to 3, just so yeah, not much of a boost, but just a little bit. Because again, I definitely want to boost the subwoofers a bit, but yeah, maybe I could use a little bit more oomph from the main speakers as well. So I'm just going to boost the bass just a tiny bit. Because, you know, I only raised it 0.7 decibels, so that's not that much. But yeah, front soundstage, front wides, surrounds, I want to definitely tame those high frequencies as a whole. So I'm going to drop this down to -3. And honestly, -3 decibels is the lowest I can go. I can't go any further than that. So I'm just going to drop it down as far as I can go to -3. Center channel, also drop high frequencies to -3. Bass is already at +3, so let's keep it there. Oh yeah, and crossover, I want to put down to 60 Hertz. Oh yeah, did I do that for the front? No, crossover down to 60. Surrounds, again, high frequencies down to -3. Bass is already at +3, so we'll leave it there. Oh yeah, and the crossover to 60 as well. Oh yeah, front wides. Now the front wides, the crossover can't go down as far as the T65s because the front wides and the surround backs are the T65 Slims. So because they aren't as deep, the frequency response doesn't go as far down as the regular T65s. If I remember correctly, I think the T65 Slims can only, the very bottom frequency in its frequency response is 60 Hertz, I believe. Rule of thumb is whatever the lowest frequency that the speaker can handle, the crossover, you want it to be roughly 10 to 20 Hertz above that. So since the T65 Slims only go down to about 60, I want to set the crossovers to 80, like the THX recommended 80 Hertz. And for whatever reason, after looking at some of the crossovers that Dirac Live did automatically, I was really surprised that the front wides, and only the front wides, it assigned all the way up to 105 Hertz. Can you see that? 105 Hertz. That's crazy. I don't know why they did that. So I'm gonna drop that down to 80 Hertz, like I said. Low frequencies are already at +3 decibels. Yeah, let's drop that down to -3 to tame those high frequencies, like I said. Yeah, we've already done the surrounds. Surround backs. Oh, interesting. 77. Because if you do crossovers within the AVR itself, like if you're doing it with Odyssey, typically you can only adjust it by increments of 10 Hertz, sometimes 20 Hertz. So I do like the fact that I can adjust the Hertz by increments of 1 instead of 10 or 20. So if this automatically set it to 77, I mean, yeah, it can go down to 60. Because I would like it to pump out as much low frequencies as possible. I don't know, to match the surround backs, let's go back up to the front wides and let's also set that to 77, just so they're on par with each other. Okay, surround back, front height. Oh yeah, surround back, did we? Yeah, let's take that down to -3. Bass is already at +3. Okay, let's go to the heights. I don't think I need to adjust the high frequencies with the height channels as much. I'm pretty sure it was just the ear level speakers that were shrill and ear piercing, but I don't know. I'll obviously watch some more stuff after I've done these manual tweaks. Yeah, I think I'll just leave that at -2.5 decibels. Middle heights, +3 with the low frequencies, -0.3 decibels for the high frequencies. That's interesting. I don't know, maybe we'll just leave it at 0. Just have it flat. I mean, I do like having a little bit of a dip in the high frequencies. So what was this again? Negative 2.5? Yeah, let's just match these. So that's negative 2.5 as well. Rear heights, bass frequency is plus 3 decibels already. Negative 0.3 again. Let's drop that down to negative 2.5 to match the rest. Oh yeah, and gosh, getting ahead of myself. Let's double check these crossovers. Wow, high channels it's set to 70. Okay, because they are smaller. The woofers are only 6.5 inches, I think. It's got the same AMT tweeter though. So 70, yeah, let's have all of them be at 70. 70, there we go. Rear heights, 76. Let's drop it down to 70. Okay, that's a negative 2.5. Center height, crossover is already at 70. Plus 3 decibels with the bass, negative 0.3. Let's again drop that down to negative 2.5 to make things a little more symmetrical. Voice of God, oh, 0. Let's drop it down to negative 2.5, plus 3. And again, weird. Let's drop this down. Let's drop the crossover to 70 to match the other height channels. Let's go back into Dirac Live, because apparently that's the only way to adjust the levels of the subwoofers individually. So here at the bottom, let's select subwoofer 1. I do want to boost that maybe 1.5 decibels. Subwoofer 2. Oh, I see. It just applies it to all. Got it. So maybe even a 2 decibel boost. Let's try that. I mean, of course, I can make some more changes. Save project. Okay, proceed to filter export. Yeah, I want this to be part of Dirac Live Plus bass control. Speakers and subs. Filter transferred to slot 2. Bass control. Calculate. Bleep, blop, blorp, bloop, bloop, bleep, blop. Honestly, since the Marantz AV10 can do directional bass, I wonder how that would affect bass control. Because right now, I just have the subwoofer set to standard mode, where it literally is just like one cohesive unit that the 4 subwoofers make up. But if I set it to directional bass, so that the bass moves around, I imagine Dirac Live Bass Control would take that into account and do its super cool calculations. That's definitely going to be the next experiment because I really want to see if that makes a difference. If I can actually hear bass movement with directional bass. Ah, there we go. Calculation has been saved as a snapshot. Cool. Filter transferred to slot 2. Okay, I think that's all the manual tweaks I'm going to do. Time to watch some more demos again and see if there are any improvements, especially in the bass response. See if I get that chest thumping bass that I really like. All right, catch you on the flip side. So I thought I would give you some final thoughts on this initial wave of Dirac Live and bass control. Survey says, wow. I mean, truly amazing. Way better than Odyssey ever did. My only concern is, what is it actually basing the target curve on? I know I can manually make adjustments to the nodes when looking at the target curve, but then I'm just making adjustments willy-nilly or just using my ears. I would love to revisit this topic by running Dirac Live, bass control, and adding Joe and Tell's Magic Beans target curve into the mix. That way, by running both near-field speaker measurements and measurements from the main listening position, I have a more accurate target curve. Dirac Live can handle up to 3 filter slots, so that could easily be the 3rd slot with Dirac Live, bass control, and Magic Beans. Or maybe there actually is a way to truly get a custom target curve through Dirac Live. After this initial wave, I will be reaching out to Dirac just to make sure I did everything right, but also just FYI, I am in talks with my Dirac contact to do a pre-recorded interview with one of their engineers. My buddy Brad, Home Theater Gamer, will also be joining me for that interview since he largely deals with calibration tutorials on his channel. So be on the lookout for that, hopefully soon. But aside from the target curve and making some minor tweaks, watching some demos, making a few more minor tweaks, etc., I think I got it down to a place where it has made this little office theater sound incredible. After reducing the high frequencies a bit, the shrill moments in the racing scene of Ready Player One were more tolerable. I boosted the bass a bit, and once again, like what I had in my previous theater, I get those aggressive bass hits that travel through my chair, going from my butt to the top of my head. Glorious. But I gotta say, I really enjoy having the power to make some minor manual tweaks, but then I just tell the software to recalculate the bass, it crunches the numbers, then I send those updated filters wirelessly to the Marantz AV10. Boom. Honestly, that's the biggest value of Dirac Live Plus bass control. I know this can also be done with the more robust Odyssey Multi-Q X, but it is more manual. There is a lot more work on my part that would need to be done. And time is valuable. Time is money. Yes, sometimes I do feel particularly nerdy and want to do all the things myself, even if it takes all day. But other times, I just want to make some minor tweaks and just say, okay, Dirac, do your thing and let it crunch the numbers for me. Because where I have this system now, dialogue is clear as day, it's so intelligible, voices have some richness and depth to them without sounding too bassy or boomy. I don't have any need for subtitles like I do when streaming something in my living room back home. Separation of channels is on point. Everything has its place. Height channels are so immersive, and since Dirac Live takes into account however many channels an AVR or processor supports, it's incredible that running Dirac Live also means dialing in the R3D specific center height and voice of God channels. If I were to do the same thing with any other combination of calibration hardware and software, like REW for example, I would have to do some weird steps to get sound to come out of those speakers specifically, disconnecting and reconnecting cables, etc. Not with Dirac Live. It knew how many channels the Marantz AV10 could support and allowed me to dial in every single one of those channels easily, despite the AV10 only being able to process a total of 15 channels and 4 subwoofers simultaneously when watching something. And speaking of, it was like watching demo scenes for the first time again. It is my favorite part about getting a system dialed in, seeing and hearing and feeling these scenes like never before. Case in point, I wanted to watch the Battle of Pelennor Fields from Return of the King, but I forgot that I had left the trilogy back home when we watched it over Christmas break. But I still had the trilogy on Blu-ray here, which is mixed in 6.1 DTS HD Master Audio. Yeah, 6.1, where you have one surround back channel. So I threw that in and flipped it to DTS Neural X to include my front wides and heights and everything. Money. It sounded so good. And even with it being natively mixed in 6.1 DTS HD MA audio, it still gave me a couple of moments where the bass went straight up my back. Now that's immersive. I watched the first kaiju fight scene from Pacific Rim, so bombastic with titans and gigantic Jaeger robots fighting amongst skyscrapers. All 3 major fight scenes in Godzilla vs. Kong. One of my favorite more subtle sound design scenes in the 2014 Godzilla where the titan slowly moves below a train bridge. I love that one. The sandstorm scene in Mad Max Fury Road. So immersive with the lightning and sand whipping around the entire soundstage. I was like a kid in a candy store, just loving every second of these demo scenes with this system locked in and firing on all cylinders. So yeah, you can officially call me a fan of Dirac Live and bass control. I hope you enjoyed this transparent look into my first official journey with Dirac Live. I know I may have overlooked some aspects or didn't quite take advantage of Dirac Live's full potential, but honestly that was the point of this particular video, to see what it could do with someone going in blind. And saying I was impressed with the final result is an understatement. So there you have it, my friends. I hope you learned something or were inspired in some way. Dirac is legit, and I can't wait to interview that engineer soon. But until then, please be kind to each other out there. Don't just watch TV and movies, experience them with a fine-tuned system courtesy of Dirac Live and bass control. And of course, appreciate sound design.